What's up everybody, it's Endymion. If you didn't know, I tend to have a bone to pick when it comes to Western creators and their often brain-dead takes on things in the world. Well, it's happened again, and this time, it's a doozy. But before I begin, if you like the video, consider subscribing and sharing it to give my life meaning, and hit the bell to be notified of future uploads. Now let's talk about FromSoftware and women. Here we go. So on October 3rd, Polygon decided to release an article titled Elden Ring's Malenia Embodies FromSoftware's Problems with Women. And from that title alone, you can imagine the shitstorm it's begun to rile up. The article's basic gist is that FromSoftware tends to always write women in their games as evil and awful human beings, and Malenia is the latest example of this. There's a lot to unpack, of course, so I figured we should go section by section and really try to understand the stupidity that birthed this kind of article. One part that immediately made my eyebrow raise was this part, and I quote, "This enigmatic warrior captured the audience from the moment she appeared, and she featured prominently in the rest of the game's marketing materials. But instead of becoming an uncontested favorite, she frustrated fans and revealed the limitations of FromSoftware's imagination." It's ironic hearing a Western gaming journalist say of all developers that FromSoftware is limited when it comes to imagination, when it was their forward-thinking ways that helped shape the past decade of games and birthed entire subgenres like Souls-likes. You know, a subgenre so popular that franchises like Star Wars and Final Fantasy have even begun to dive into it. But remember guys, FromSoftware has no imagination whatsoever. And it gets worse. This next part is sure to piss people off, and I quote, "Everything in the first phase of the fight is designed to thwart and emasculate. There's a deep humor in the idea of a woman whose very attacks steal health from you to empower herself. And the ultimate joke, just when you think you've knocked her down, she gets back up one last time." I think I speak for many when I say that Malenia never came across to me anyways as some beacon of feminism. She was always supposed to be this godlike being who was more a monster than anything else. Look, Polygon is no stranger to having brain-dead takes in the past, but trying to say that Malenia is hated because she's a woman is some Olympic-level brain gymnastics even by Polygon's own standards. FromSoftware is no stranger to having powerful and deadly women in their games. I mean, characters like Lady Maria in Bloodborne are widely considered to be one of the hardest bosses FromSoft has ever made. And if anything, FromSoft tends to make some of their greatest and most difficult fights to be in the form of dangerous, badass women. And I don't think there's anyone out there that I've ever seen or heard online anyway, saying that FromSoftware is biased and makes women powerful because they hate men or something. It's just a cool archetype for a character that people love. A badass, beautiful woman is just a cool idea in stories. It's kind of like how I can never get enough of the old grizzled man meets young man archetype. It's just cool. It has nothing to do with feminism, toxic masculinity, or whatever buzzwords these hacks push. It's just dope. It's really not that deep. But anyway, this next part is crazy, and I quote, "Malenia exemplifies the way FromSoft writes women in its games. Whether bosses or NPCs you meet in the wild, these women have a shared condition. They exist in tragically declined worlds sharing a specific brokenness, disfigurement, abandonment, and loss. They are afflicted by gender, and the cure for when they are obstacles instead of mutely helpful is for the player to enact violence. It is a particular kind of idealized femininity, as fantastical as the foreboding castles and giant trees. Them more quiet, void of needs or motivations. An echoed presence of dolls, mothers, and even helpmeets who guide the player along. Their emotions are muted in their more docile counterparts before erupting into a shrieking, horrifying hysteria when encountered in combat." Jesus Christ, man, the way this person writes, it's so annoying to read. Anyway, congratulations Polygon, you just summarized every character in every FromSoftware game ever. All of their worlds are awful nightmares full of monsters and death. It's not a sexism thing that women can be killed in these games. I mean, men can be too, and it's odd that it only bothers Polygon when a woman is killed, But if men die, it's all sunshines and rainbows, I guess. Regardless of gender, social standing, or condition, FromSoftware has a particular fascination with the concept of ruined glory, and there's nothing wrong with that. Characters like Ludwig the Holy Blade was originally a magnificent hunter, but by the time you meet him in Bloodborne, he's a disfigured, horse-like beast wailing in agony. I don't look at bosses like Ludwig or say Radon in Elden Ring and think to myself, FromSoftware hates men, or wonder why I can't save them. These games are never about saving anyone, it's about cycles and trying to replace or usher in new eras where new stories and worlds can exist. And I think FromSoft does a really good job of making their worlds feel hostile and believable. No one is safe regardless of their identity, and that makes it feel fair and realistic. I've never once looked at Malenia and felt like my masculinity was in danger or challenged either. If that were a thing, then Godfrey should make me cry because that dude looks like he eats lions for breakfast with how big his muscles are. And I should be apparently intimidated by him, but I'm not. I don't understand why these game journos of the Western variety always feel like everything is out to get them or something. Like, people just like hot women, and people also like big scary dudes with biceps the size of tree trunks. It's not that deep, I promise you. Like, when I killed Lady Maria in Bloodborne, I didn't see her as a woman or as beneath me. I saw her as a challenge. An obstacle in need of removal so that I could explore the world more and discover what was beyond that fight. And honestly, I think it's refreshing of FromSoftware to not make someone like Maria a good person either. In the lore, Maria massacred the fishing hamlet village with her fellow members because they wanted to find Kos, the Great One. And although Maria was regretful of her actions, it didn't take away from the fact that she did murder countless innocent people in the name of progress for humanity. If Maria was made by a Western developer, she would be a victim and it would turn out it was all a man's fault and we should all feel sorry for her. But I don't. She made decisions like Ludwig or any other FromSoft character and paid her due in agony like every other character. And that's why it's interesting. It's because it's not biased, which is something Western devs have a really hard time understanding these days. But anyway, I think gaming journos are just so hell-bent on using buzzwords like feminism, toxic masculinity, and so on because they know it gets clicks. But it only reveals the sad reality of journalism in the end. And that is that the traditional ways of video game websites are largely dying and people aren't interested in being attacked for simply enjoying stuff that they find cool. But let's keep going down into the pits of hell, shall we? Then the Polygon writer quotes another writer named Matt Kim who wrote this when talking about female characters in FromSoftware games, and I quote, "While not exclusive to Japanese anime, this sort of archetype is one of the most popular types of characters in the medium. Strangely still is that these characters are actively fetishized for their outer worldliness, I can't say this, let's just keep going. Their lack of a broad emotional spectrum is part of their appeal. Additionally, these characters are typically more resilient than everyone else in their story, perhaps because they are unburdened by emotions. Yet one could also argue that their lack of emotions used here as an unfortunate euphemism for men's conception of female shortcomings makes it easier to believe they are capable of such great strengths. However, once engaged in combat, she reveals her true monstrous form." Oh my god, the way these people write. Yet again, these writers think that male gamers only see these women as domestic abuse piñatas that are excuses to unleash their toxic masculinity upon, apparently. Dear Western gaming journalists, it's just not that deep, guys. We just like cool shit, and whether it's a woman, man, or beast, I promise you it's not rooted in some weird sexist undertones. Like, if I go by this logic, then is me fighting Ishin in Sekiro an allegory for elderly abuse? Or could it be, just maybe, that I just like playing video games and enjoy fighting cool shit in dope locations with sick weapons while banger soundtracks play? You tell me, gaming journos. Cause I'm just a male gamer. Apparently I'm not capable of understanding anything, and according to you, I only view women as objects in need of conquering. Why are these journalists like this? Why can't we just enjoy games without being talked down to? If anything, players want more women in both antagonistic and heroic roles because women characters are cool. Well, when they're not talking down to their audience or have to pull down every male character around them in order to legitimize themselves, of course. Because that's what I would call toxic feminism, but I'll leave that for a future video. Let's keep this dumpster fire moving. This next part is, and I quote, Malenia's boss fight is punishingly difficult, and the audience's hostile and competitive attitudes about it are often steeped in gender toxicity. Numerous Reddit posts, YouTube videos, and tweets talk about players' failures or successes while littered with sexist slurs. Look, I'm sure there's some part of the FromSoftware fanbase that is sexist, but largely speaking, the majority of us are just normal people. We don't see Malenia as an attack on our masculinity. And look, I don't even like fighting Malenia either, not because she's a woman, but because she's hard and that waterfowl dance move is bullshit. She can omni-slash your ass into sashimi in an instant, but I promise you I never once thought this fight would be better if she was a man or something. I personally think Malenia is a Sekiro boss stuck in an Elden Ring game, but what do I know? I'm just a male gamer, I guess. I should check my privilege or whatever they tell you to do these days. Polygon goes on to say, and I quote, "Everything about her is hostile and taunts the player. When faced with a difficult, defiant woman who has never been beaten, men cannot help but fantasize about being the one to take her down. I promise you the part where Malenia says she's never been beaten only got me hyped. I never looked at her and thought I had to bring her down because she was a woman. Malenia is a literal god. By definition, regardless of gender or skin color, she's going to be superior to you in every way. It's the same with Radon or Radagon. The point of these fights is that they're larger than life. They're meant to evoke bewilderment and also make the player feel like they're facing off against something far beyond their own capabilities. But it's because of this dichotomy of man versus god is why Elden Ring's combat and pivotal boss encounters work so well. It's supposed to be a spectacle. It was never about the skin color, gender, or anything else. We're getting close to the end, everybody, so just hang in there, and I quote, oh man, this is a wall of text. Alright, here we go. These narrative choices swiftly undercut her initially provocative design, cheapening their impact. What's the scariest thing a team of designers could dream up? A distant warrior woman who doesn't care about them slowly succumbing to a rot that infected her from birth. While Malenia's character writing had grown slightly beyond the way women were written in earlier FromSoft games, her arc is still confined by the same laws. What could have been a place for mechanical and narrative evolution backslides into being merely a means to an end within a video game. Women continue to populate the path as either passive helpmeets or predictable obstacles which the fanbase is all too happy to step over. Okay, Malenia is not scary or intimidating because she's a woman. She's intimidating because she's a freaking god who basically killed an entire part of the world due to her crazy scarlet rot. She's like a walking nuclear bomb, constantly oozing out her own version of radiation across the world. She's like this movie monster, a being so powerful and unhinged you feel like a tourist stuck in a cage with a tiger who hasn't eaten for a week. She's this terrifying display of what the gods are capable of within the world of Elden Ring. How the actions of one supreme being can bring about so much devastation upon a land torn asunder. No one is too happy to step over her because she's crazy strong. If anything, most people don't even want to fight her, not because she's a lady, but because she's knucking futs to fight. I'd rather fight literally any other boss in any game than have to suffer through Malenia again. And that's simply because she's hard, and in my opinion, she's almost too difficult for even FromSoftware players. She's a nuke ready to go off at any minute. That's why people love and hate her, not because she's a woman. Finally, we have the ending, and I quote, "While FromSoft games are often intriguing meditations on the corrupting influence of power, the inevitability of death, and the lurking dread of cosmic horror, the women in them feel stunted. Malenia is a half-grown idea clipped back too short. What could have been is left on the floor of the Halic tree cocooned in petals and deeply dreaming of revenge. Dude, Malenia is not stunted or half-baked. If anything, she is the ultimate creation of FromSoftware when it comes to lore, design, and spectacle. She's the most terrifying boss they have ever made yet, and I honestly shudder at the thought of her being dethroned in the future by some inevitable new boss in another game. Malenia is hated because she feels unbalanced, and like I said before, she would have made far more sense in Sekiro than Elden Ring combat-wise. Her waterfowl dance attack looks like a perfect Sekiro deflection-made attack. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Malenia was actually Lady Tomoe from Sekiro boss design-wise, but was later repurposed into Elden Ring instead of a Sekiro DLC, cause that's what she feels like to me. She's this legendary, terrifying, godlike warrior capable of reducing you to atoms in seconds. She's incredibly badass, scary, and intimidating. And none of that has to do with her being a woman. If anything, if Malenia was a man, she'd be just as feared as she is now. I guess what I'm trying to say is that this entire article gave me a headache. And it doesn't help that I had to sit through reading it with a hangover due to partying the night before like an idiot. Anyway, to put it all to an end as gracefully as I can, we as men are largely not intimidated by strong female characters. As long as the character in question are defined by actual worthwhile story-related things, like their flaws or personality and not only by what's between their legs, then it's a good character in my book. Basically, Malenia is a good female character and a solid movie monster-like design for a game like Elden Ring. Stop trying to say FromSoftware fans are sexist, we just like hot women doing dope shit in cool games. It's not that deep, you insufferable Western gaming journalists. Thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe to give my life meaning, share the video to help stop this stupid gaming journo BS, and thanks to my patrons for feeding my awful content about things like Polygon articles. I'm Endymion, I'm still hungover, my shoulder hurts, and my knees sound like Rice Krispies when you pour milk over them. I'm going to stop talking now and become one with my bed. Just screw Polygon and their stupid articles, and I'll see you in the next one.